and we're back. Welcome to a new Challenge Real Estate Academy. I'm your host, Todd Statham, and today we're going to be talking about the three types of agency. All right, so the first type of agency we're going to talk about is single exclusive agency. It's the easiest one on the North Carolina real estate test, okay? Again, this is pre-licensing class, so I think this will be really beneficial to help you guys understanding different types of agency. So exclusive agency is very simple. That means that the seller has an agent from firm A and the buyer has an agent from firm B. That means that there's no dual agency in this. That means that firm B is going to go into contract with firm A. Agent A and agent B are from separate firms. So it's a single exclusive agency. That means simply that you have two separate firms in this transaction, okay? It's different from dual agency. And in the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, the WWREA brochure, which I keep on my phone at all times, especially if I get into conversation and somebody starts giving me way more information, especially like personal or confidential information about their finances and everything else. I need to be able to show them the WWREA as quickly as possible so that I can talk about the different types of agency and things like that. All right, so that's single exclusive agency. The next type of agency, which we've gone over before in my videos, I did a little deeper dive into dual agency. So XYZ Realty, they're going to represent the buyer and seller in a transaction. So that's dual agency, where one agency represents both the buyer and seller. That also means that you can have one agent from that agency representing both the buyer and seller in the transaction. Or you can have an agent representing from the same agency, from XYZ Realty, representing the seller, and you can have an agent from XYZ Realty representing the buyer. That is also dual agency. Also a reminder, and it's also on your test, that your firm must have in its rules, in its bylaws, that they will do dual agency or they will do designated dual agency. Okay, so remember that, and this is very important, that you can have either one agent from the same agency representing both buyer and seller, or you can have two agents from the same agency, one agent representing the buyer and one agent representing the seller. And that's that reminder right there. So if you look at it, dual agency must, and this is a key, if you're an exclusive right to sell or exclusive right to buy contract, it's a written contract, you must have it, in there, whether or not that you can do dual agency or designated dual agency, or if you're just going to do single agency. Okay. The only way that sellers can never is always a written contract, but you can have an oral agreement with somebody to go show homes and to represent them. In that case, you can have an oral agreement to do dual agency, but it must be in writing by the time that the person is ready to make an offer on a home or a condo or whatever. Okay, to get into a contract or get into a transaction. All right, so are there limitations to dual agency? And yeah, there are, and it's mostly fiduciary duties, because you owe obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care to your client. And so that means that if I am a single agent representing both a seller and a buyer, I owe both of those parties my fiduciary responsibility as a real estate broker. I owe them old car. Remember, and I think everybody who's taking a pre-licensing class should know old car. All right, remember, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and also reasonable care. Okay, so you have to, and that's the hardest part of this, and that's one of the limitations is being able to balance and be unbiased to both groups. And personally, I don't do it. I would much rather do dual agency in a sense where I have another broker representing the buyer and I represent the seller, or I represent the buyer and they represent the seller. Okay? And that's when we get into designated dual agency. We'll talk about that. So if two agents from the same firm represent the buyer and seller in the transaction, the firm owes both clients total fiduciary responsibility. Okay? So designated dual agency. So if I am, and so what's the major difference? The major difference is a BIC will appoint designated agents. Okay? So let's just go back to my scenario from the last slide there. I have a buyer client, and they have said that I can do dual agency. All right, and I also have a seller client. Okay, and my buyer client wants to see my seller's client's home, and I feel that I can't represent both of those interests fully, okay? That I just don't feel secure enough to do that. So I may say that I'm going to represent the seller. I might ask my BIC to find a designated agent to represent the buyer so that I don't feel that there's conflict of interest. So that's one way. So the BIC would find somebody who doesn't have knowledge of anything about the deal or anything else, because if you have a broker in my firm knows about my clients, my seller clients' financial situation and everything else, and has confidential information that would give them an advantage in the deal, they have to recuse themselves for that. So my BIC would find somebody that has no knowledge of the deal, and they could as long as the buyer said is okay, they could represent the buyer in the transaction, and I still would represent the seller, and then we would be in dual agency, but they would designate somebody to do that. So, and again, in this case, we have seller and buyer in the exact same transaction in the exact same firm. So, same firm, one agent, or same firm, two agents. And again, we go back to that idea of, let's say that we're in a transaction, okay, and we're in a dual agent transaction, and one of the agents in the transaction decides that they are leaving before before the transaction's done, and our brokerage says that we're still early on in the transaction, and they're not going to allow them to complete the transaction. There's some friction. I don't know. This is a made up scenario. Then because the firm owns the contract, they could designate somebody to represent that person's client, okay? Because they're leaving the firm, or let's say that their license goes inactive, okay? And this deal's not going to be done, so they may designate another agent to be that agent for that. So it's the BIC designating somebody to represent one or both of the parties, and they have no information about the seller or the buyer. All right, so that's designated dual agents. So testing question examples that we would have would be: a North Carolina provisional broker represents a buyer that becomes interested in a home listed by the supervising broker in charge. So the question is, how may the provisional broker and the broker in charge act as dual agents? Or better yet, can they act as dual agents? What do you guys think? All right, and so this is where you can stop and you can think about this, before you go on. But the answer is yes. You can be dual agents, the broker in charge and a provisional broker. And remember, a provisional broker is just a broker who has not completed the 90 hours of post-licensing classes, okay? And so you can be dual agents. You can be dual agents in a transaction. Provisional broker and a broker in charge can be dual agents in a transaction. May a provisional broker and a broker in charge act as designated dual agents? And again, it's a very good question. And you will see both these types of questions on the national test. And I'm sure in your in the classes that you're taking for your post exams, you'll probably see questions like this that exist as well. So can a provisional broker and a broker in charge act as designated agents? Again, you can pause it, before the answer comes up, and then you can think and then answer it. But the answer is no. The answer is no. All right? They are not permitted to designate as the broker in charge because they will gain personal information about the buyer while exercising supervisory duties. So they are not permitted to designate a provisional broker to be the other person in the transaction because they already have all the personal information. They can gain more information, and it becomes, I guess, biased would be a good word, or you have a conflict of interest. That would be the better word, conflict of interest within that. So no, they cannot be. You cannot designate a provisional broker. The broker in charge cannot designate a provisional broker to be a broker in charge. All right, so as you've seen, we've gone through all three, okay? Gone through single exclusive agency, dual agency, and designated dual agency. I hope these videos help you. If they do, remember, please hit like and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching.